All right, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me again this year. Thank you to Mark and the SBA, to the Center for Women and Enterprise, to Bryant University and President Makeley, and especially to my colleagues in government on this stage and in the audience, and to all of the business leaders and entrepreneurs who are here today. I ran for treasurer 2 years ago, and actually, by the way, today is our 2-year anniversary of Inauguration Day. We're exactly halfway through our term, those of us who are in statewide office. I ran on the platform that I would use the treasurer's office to help promote economic growth and jobs in Rhode Island. And there are 4 areas that I want to just touch on, ways that we've done that now that we're at the halfway point of the term. I will say, I think that the most important quality for anyone in elected office is the ability to listen. That's why we're here. That's why I'm glad that my colleagues in government are here so that we can listen to all of you. And as I've listened to you this year, last year, in the past, there are a few areas that really stand out that I've tried to work on. The first has to do with cost structure and cost of doing business. Now, all of these ideas about how to reduce the cost of doing business are linked in one way or another to our ability at the state level to keep our own costs in line, and particularly our liability burdens. Now, the very first thing that I was involved in when I took office 2 years ago, along with the governor, the speaker and Senate president, and others, was working on the pension settlement that helped lock in $4 billion of savings, more than 92% of the savings of the pension reform that was passed in 2011. In addition to that, we've taken some steps to improve performance of the pension system. We are implementing a new investment strategy that is projected to get us stronger performance over time, reduce the fees that we pay out of the pension system by tens of millions of dollars. These things help reduce our costs at the state level and at the municipal level, savings which can then be used to invest in tax relief, economic development, infrastructure, and all these other priorities that we need to have a healthy business climate in Rhode Island. In that same vein, we worked especially closely with Senator DuPont last year to pass a debt reform package. There's a number of different facets to that. One example is we have moved now at the state level to what's called competitive debt issuance of our state's general obligation bonds. What does that mean? It means that now, when we're choosing which underwriters to work with to float our bonds, the bonds that go on the ballot every 2 years, we are now doing it through a competitive auction process. That means that we pay a lower cost of interest on our debt than we would otherwise. We've already saved millions of dollars a year by doing this. We're working with cities and towns and other agencies to help them do it when appropriate. These little things that can be dry and can be boring can save a lot of money, which again can then be reinvested in the economy. As part of this, we've also commissioned the first debt affordability study that Rhode Island has done in almost 2 decades. And this is going to be a study that is unlike anything that's been done before, not only in Rhode Island, but by any other state in the country. What we are going to be doing is looking comprehensively at how do our liabilities, traditional debt, pension, healthcare, and OPEB, compare to other states across the country. We're going to be doing it in a way that includes municipalities, and we're going to be normalizing for things like assumptions for the pension system. So for example, on the face of it, it may look like Massachusetts has lower pension costs per capita than Rhode Island, but that's because they use a higher assumed rate of return on their pension system than we do. They still use an 8% assumed rate of return. When you normalize for that, what you find is that actually the pension situation in Massachusetts is rougher than it is here in Rhode Island. So no one's done a study like this before where they've normalized for all of these different assumptions and factors. This will give us the ability and give the governor, the General Assembly, as policymakers, a level of information and a level of data superior than anything they've had access to, or any of their peers in other states have had access to before, to help fuel good policy discussions about how do we really make Rhode Island more competitive relative to other states, where are we really an outlier when it comes to the liability side of our balance sheet, That again will, I think, lead to outcomes that will help produce savings for Rhode Island, that will help us become more competitive, and will allow for greater investment in ideas like some of the ones that have been floated today. In the vein of cost control and helping businesses have a lower cost of doing business, I'm also very proud of the work that we've done in collaboration with some of the folks in this room on the new programs at the Rhode Island Infrastructure Bank to help businesses save on the cost of energy. When you talk about energy, there's two sides of the equation. There's doing what you can to increase your supply, and then there's also doing what you can to reduce your demand. Now, since we've launched these new programs at the Infrastructure Bank, we have helped cities and towns already save more than $20 million on their energy bills. That's, energy bills at schools, at libraries, at firehouses. We have, in the process, created 250 construction jobs at those municipal projects. And we did it all without spending $1 of general revenue out of the state budget. Now, that's just the first round. There's additional rounds to come. And now we are launching what's called the CPACE program, which is going to be providing access to capital for commercial property owners to help them with energy projects on their buildings. We already have 14 of those projects in the pipeline that are going to be going live in the next few months, representing more than $4.5 million invested in helping to make our commercial properties more energy efficient. Second, on the topic of building skills for a 21st century economy. As I look back over the first half of this four-year term, maybe the thing that I am most proud of is the work that we have done to revamp the College Bound Fund. For those of you who aren't familiar with College Bound, it is a great program. It is a program that allows Rhode Island families to save money for college in a tax-efficient way. You get a little tax break on your state taxes when you put money into a college-bound account, and then when it comes time to spend that money on tuition, room and board, etc., you don't have to pay the federal capital gains tax on the investment earnings. We have one of the largest 529s, it's called the 529 program, one of the largest programs in the country, and it's so successful that actually we are able to sell a lot of accounts out of state, and we charge a very small fee just on the out-of-state folks, which goes to several $million a year of scholarships at the Rhode Island colleges and universities. That's all the good news. The bad news is that even though this program had a lot of early success, over the last several years, we had gotten to a place where we weren't competitive anymore. And the investment performance was not what it should have been, the fees were too high. The rating firm Morningstar that rates mutual funds had rated College Bound last in the country for performance and fees 5 years in a row, and then stopped rating us altogether for the next 2 years, which is even worse. So we did a total overhaul of College Bound this year. We hired new managers, we totally revamped the investment lineup. We now have some of the lowest fees in the country. We made this transition in July of this year. It was the largest transition of a 529 plan from an old manager to a new manager in the history of the country. Hundreds of thousands of accounts, $6.5 billion, all reconciled to the penny. Went without a hitch. We went live. The new Morningstar ratings just came out, and we once again are now ranked among the very best 529 plans in the country. This is good for Rhode Island businesses because it means it'll be easier for families to save for college, to get those skills that they need, whether it's a four-year college, a community college, or trade schools. Finally, access to capital. Now, we're going to be making a big announcement on this in the next few weeks, but I'll give you a little preview today because this is something that I'm very excited about. We're preparing to announce a partnership with several community banks and credit unions here in Rhode Island to help small businesses with access to capital. Now, when people think of the Treasurer's Office, they think of the pension fund. We manage a number of other funds for the state as well, including the state's short-term investments, which is basically cash. And depending on the time of year in the budget cycle, we are sitting on between $500 million and $1 billion of cash.
Massachusetts. This is the Massachusetts
What's that?
Is this kind of like Massachusetts?
I don't know about Massachusetts, but what we're basically looking at doing is, we had a series of outdated regulations about how that cash could be managed that made it impossible to keep any of the state's cash in credit unions and made it very difficult to keep it in community banks. And this harkens back to a time before most credit unions in Rhode Island were federally insured and that sort of thing. It's now, through a series of changes that we're making, becoming possible for us to start keeping some more of our cash locally in the state at institutions that are doing business primarily in the state, to do it in a way that's safe, that's sound, that's liquid, and potentially to do it in a way that is tied specifically to small business lending. So pay attention in the next few weeks. We've got an exciting announcement to come there. And in conclusion, and I didn't do the timer, maybe I should have, but if you'll indulge me for just one last minute.
Siri outs you.
I really like a lot of what I've heard today, both from the committees and also from my colleagues up here on the stage. Last year, there was a little fun had at my expense about my age. I think the governor said that she was hoping to lower the average age of Rhode Island, and people made the comment that I'm helping out and doing my part. I'm 33, and but when I think about entrepreneurs, whether it's the high-tech startup entrepreneurs or whether it's the people who are opening coffee shops or restaurants, these are primarily people in my age bracket, right? There are people who start their first businesses when they're in their 50s, 60s, when they're retired from everything, but primarily, especially for first-time business owners, right, you're talking about people who are my age, plus or minus 10 years. So I spend a lot of time talking to entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs just because that's my social circle, I guess. And one point that I just want to make is, if you're going to have a successful entrepreneurial climate, you have to have a climate where it's okay to take risks and it's okay to fail. I do worry a lot, particularly at the federal level, about what is going to happen in terms of the social safety net, whether it's under the new administration, because if you want people to take risks, if you want people to stick their neck out and start a business and face the possibility of failure, it's much harder to develop that climate if people have to worry that if they fail, they're going to lose their health coverage, they're going to lose their home, they're going to lose their ability to feed young kids. So I would just encourage everyone, and by the way, if there is a push to have states take on more of these responsibilities as opposed to the federal government, small states like Rhode Island are going to have a much harder time doing that, right? If you're California, you can find ways to pay for programs knowing that nobody's going to commute from Nevada to San Francisco every day, or move a distribution center from Oakland to Oregon. It's different when you're a small state like Rhode Island and you have New Hampshire breathing down your neck, right? So as we watch what happens over the next few months in Washington, whether it's this talk about repealing Obamacare without a replacement, or gutting the Department of Labor or whatever else, just keep in mind, somewhere in a kitchen right now in Rhode Island, a restaurant kitchen, there is somebody who has the skills, the talent, maybe even the capital to go out and start their own restaurant. And the factor that they have to think about is, if it doesn't work out, am I going to be okay? You have to have an environment where it's possible to fail, and the consequences of failure may not be pleasant, but they're not going to be life-threatening. If you don't have that, you're not going to have a successful small business environment, you're not going to have a successful entrepreneurial environment. States cannot take all of this on their own. So I would encourage everybody to pay close attention to what's going on in Washington and train, all of us should train some of our advocacy and some of our efforts to making sure that at the federal level especially, there is some semblance of a social safety net that is left in place, because without that, people aren't going to take risks as much, people aren't going to be as entrepreneurial, and we're not going to have as strong of a small business climate as we all want. So with that, thank you.